Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's dive into today's topic about Israel Adesanya and his upcoming UFC fight. Adesanya and Nassourdine are gearing up to face off next weekend, and both fighters have been pointing fingers, saying the other is under more pressure to win. Recently though, Adesanya, also known as the Last Stylebender, shared that he's used to this kind of situation and isn't feeling any added stress. Before we jump further, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps. Adesanya, the former middleweight champion, is set to headline the UFC event in Saudi Arabia on February 1st. For Imavov, this is a huge opportunity. A win could place him right in the mix for a title shot. There's no doubt this is the biggest fight of his career so far. Meanwhile, for Adesanya, things are a bit different. He's coming off two tough losses against Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. Another loss here would be a major setback for him. Imavov recently brought up this point in an interview, saying all the pressure is on Adesanya. When asked about it, Adesanya responded calmly, saying, "Not really. I put the pressure on myself. If he feels that way, that's fine. I've been in this position before." It's true, Adesanya has faced back-to-back losses in his kickboxing career before, only to bounce back and achieve great things in MMA. But this time, the stakes are high. A loss, especially a one-sided one, could put an end to Adesanya's run at the top of the middleweight division. Given the situation, many fans and analysts are wondering what's next for him. There's speculation that Adesanya could move back to the light heavyweight division if things don't go his way. However, it doesn't seem like the skilled striker has any plans to leave middleweight for now. In a recent interview, Adesanya shared his thoughts about the middleweight division when asked about the other upcoming fights in February. He said, "I didn't realize all those fights were happening in February. But yeah, exciting times for the 185-pound division. To be honest though, 185 feels boring without me. I want to get in there and make things exciting again." What do you think of Adesanya's comments? Can he take down Imavov and work his way back toward another shot at the middleweight title? Recently, Islam Makhachev stirred up conversation in the MMA world when he suggested he could capture gold in the middleweight division. While his dominant submission win over Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 311 solidified his spot as one of the greatest lightweights, Dricus du Plessis, the current middleweight champion, thinks Makhachev is getting ahead of himself. After his victory, Makhachev expressed his desire to pursue the welterweight title, but he also claimed that winning the middleweight belt wasn't out of reach. In a pre-fight interview with Fox Sports Australia, ahead of his rematch with Strickland at UFC 312, du Plessis responded to these comments. He said, "Look, I know he trains with middleweights at his gym, and credit to him for being confident, but it doesn't change anything. I'd overpower him in any situation. Sure, he's a big lightweight, but I'm a big middleweight. There's a huge difference. He may be one of the greatest lightweights ever, but even his biggest fans have to question whether he could handle the top middleweights in the UFC." Du Plessis also addressed Strickland's recent challenge to keep their rematch strictly a striking battle. Strickland argued that this would be the only way to settle it like men. Unsurprisingly, du Plessis dismissed the idea, suggesting that Strickland consider switching to boxing or kickboxing if he doesn't want to fight under MMA rules. Taking to social media, du Plessis said, "It's a ridiculous thing to ask." Du Plessis had more to say about Strickland's striking-only challenge, stating, "If you want to make agreements about just standing and striking, go do boxing. I don't go into fights thinking I have to stand up or take someone down. I adapt to the situation and do what's necessary." What do you think? Do you agree with the champion's approach, or does the outspoken challenger have a point? Currently, it seems Arman Tsarukyan will need to earn another win before the UFC considers giving him a rematch with Islam Makhachev. Acknowledging this, the lightweight contender has already begun calling for his next fight. Tsarukyan was initially scheduled to face Makhachev at UFC 311, but a back injury forced him to withdraw just a day before the event. After Makhachev's dominant submission victory over Alexander Volkanovski, UFC President Dana White made it clear that Tsarukyan would need to secure another victory to be back in the title conversation. In response, Tsarukyan took to social media with a bold challenge. Alongside a photo of his previous fight with Charles Oliveira, he wrote, "The #1 contender has a name, and it's Arman Tsarukyan. If anyone wants to be the #1 contender, they need to fight me. I'm ready and open. Don't be afraid to say my name. I promise I won't hit too hard. While Tsarukyan didn't directly call out Oliveira in that post, he has mentioned in interviews after UFC 311 that a rematch with Du Bronx makes sense. The two fighters last faced off in April, with Tsarukyan winning by a close split decision. Given their current rankings as the number 1 and 2 contenders in the lightweight division, a rematch seems like a natural next step. Considering how close their first fight was, it wouldn't be surprising if the UFC decides to run it back. The general belief is that Khamzat Chimaev will face the winner of the upcoming middleweight title fight between Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland. However, Nassourdine thinks he can shake things up if he defeats Israel Adesanya in their fight next weekend. Since Chimaev's dominant win over former champion Robert Whittaker in October, nearly everyone has assumed he's next in line for a middleweight title shot. Even UFC President Dana White recently confirmed that Chimaev is a likely contender for the belt. But first, Imavov is set to face Adesanya on February 1st at the UFC's event in Saudi Arabia. In a recent interview, the number 5 ranked Imavov shared his belief that he could leapfrog Chimaev for the title shot with a strong performance against Adesanya. He stated, "Depending on my performance, I can get the next title shot before Khamzat. I fought 4 times in 1 year, beating 2 top 5 fighters and 2 top 10 fighters. That's a big deal, and it's something the UFC appreciates. I never turn down fights. For now, though, I'm focused on my next fight, and we'll see what happens after that." Could Imavov jump to the front of the line for a championship shot? He would likely need an incredible performance to make that happen. While he's on a 4-fight winning streak, he does have a loss to Strickland from 2023 on his record. Speaking of the middleweight division, Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland will face off for the second time at UFC 312 on February 8th. Du Plessis recently shared on social media that he's already arrived in Australia, where UFC 312 will take place. Do you see Du Plessis defeating Strickland again, or will Strickland reclaim the middleweight crown? Here are some exciting fights recently added to the UFC schedule. February 22nd in Seattle, a featherweight matchup between Andre Fili and Melsik Bagdasaryan. Fili last fought in June, earning a split decision win over Cub Swanson, while Bagdasaryan also fought in June, scoring a submission victory. February 15th in Las Vegas. Gabriel Bonfim will now face Chaos Williams after Bonfim's original opponent, Rinat Fakhretdinov, withdrew. Bonfim is coming off a decision win in July, while Williams hasn't competed since his knockout win last May. March 15th in Las Vegas. Marvin Vettori will face Roman Dolidze for the second time in a middleweight bout. Vettori defeated Dolidze by decision in their first fight in 2023. Dolidze, meanwhile, is coming off a TKO win over Kevin Holland in October. UFC 314, light heavyweight clash. Nikita Krylov will take on Dominic Reyes. Krylov is on a 3-fight winning streak, most recently earning a submission victory. Reyes, after a tough losing streak, rebounded with knockout wins over Anthony Smith and Dustin Jacoby. Flyweight prospect battle. Luis Gurul will make his UFC debut against Otis Osborne at the April 5th card in Las Vegas. Gurul is undefeated in his last 12 fights, while Osborne is looking to end his 3-fight losing streak. Women's strawweight title eliminator, Yan Xiaonan will face Verna Jandiroba on April 12th at UFC 314. Yan recently bounced back with a win in November, while Jandiroba has won 4 straight fights, including a submission victory in July. It's been almost a year since we last saw Alexander Volkanovski in action, but fans might not have to wait much longer for his return. The legendary featherweight hasn't competed since his knockout loss to current champion Ilia Topuria last February. Given Volkanovski's incredible run as featherweight champion, a rematch with Topuria seems likely, especially after Topuria defeated Max Holloway in October. Topuria himself has acknowledged that a rematch with Volkanovski makes sense, although he's also expressed interest in moving up to lightweight. Recently, Volkanovski spoke with Sky Sports New Zealand about his timeline for a return. He said, "Nothing's set in stone yet. I've been talking about being ready for March or April. They haven't given me an exact date, but I'd say a couple of months. April sounds good, but you never know." If Volkanovski and Topuria do face off again, it could headline one of the UFC's spring events. Hopefully we'll get confirmation soon. Alex Pereira is making headlines again, but this time it's not because of his performance in the cage. Instead, it's due to his reaction to a recent story by longtime MMA journalist Guilherme Cruz. The story involved Pereira's sister, Aline Pereira, who fights for Karate Combat. According to the piece, Aline mentioned working part-time for Amazon to make ends meet and expressed her desire to leave the job. After the article was published, Pereira criticized Cruz, accusing him of taking advantage of the situation and painting a negative picture. Pereira, via a translated audio clip, said, "You almost cut off the recording after my sister mentioned she was working. If you weren't acting maliciously, you would have asked if I help her in any way. You knew prolonging the conversation wouldn't give you the material you wanted. For people working hard to succeed, it would have been important. I'll address this in an interview at the right time and talk about your behavior, especially with my sister. You don't deserve to do this kind of work, spreading negativity." Pereira's comments quickly sparked online reactions. Some defended the journalist, while others criticized Pereira. One user wrote, "Cruz did nothing wrong. If Pereira's sister has a part-time job, that's not on the reporter." Another added, "If Alex is upset, he should talk to his sister. Maybe she takes pride in providing for herself, even though her brother supports her." Others noted that Aline might be working as part of her visa requirements, which limit how much she can rely on outside financial support. Despite the controversy, Aline Pereira continued to impress in the ring, winning her fight last night with a knockout. After the victory, she celebrated with a heartfelt hug from her brother Alex. The UFC recently made changes to its roster, releasing 5 fighters. Among them was Magomed Gassanov, a winner of Dana White's Contender Series, who had a 2-1 record in the promotion. Victoria Dudakova, a strawweight fighter with a 2-2 record, was also let go. Dudakova gained attention earlier this month for slapping her coach during an event. Jose Johnson, who won just one of his 4 fights in the UFC, was another name on the list. Ihor Potieria, a light heavyweight fighter with a tough record of 2 wins and 6 losses, was also released despite having been a Contender Series standout. Lastly, Josephine Knudsen, who went 2-1 in the UFC and recently suffered a loss at UFC Tampa, has reportedly signed with the GFL after her release. One of the most surprising absences from the list was Tony Ferguson. Despite rumors suggesting he has parted ways with the UFC, there has been no official confirmation. Reputable outlets like MMA Junkie have reported that Ferguson and the UFC are no longer working together. However, the initial skepticism surrounding the report stems from some GFL signings publicly denying similar news. Until Dana White or Tony Ferguson directly confirm the split, there remains room for doubt. What do you think of these recent roster changes? Should the UFC consider signing new talent like Aline Pereira or others from smaller promotions? Weight cutting, in my opinion, is the worst part of this sport. Take someone like Islam Makhachev, for example. He's incredibly skilled and undeniably one of the best fighters on the planet, but his size raises eyebrows. When you stand next to him, you can't help but wonder, how does this guy make 170 pounds? The truth is, weight cutting has become a dangerous and outdated practice that needs to be addressed. One solution could be eliminating weight cutting entirely. Imagine a system where fighters are randomly tested for their natural walking weight. You show up, step on a scale, and your actual weight is recorded. If you're walking around at 190 pounds, how can you safely compete at 170? It doesn't make sense. Instead of extreme weight cuts, we should add more weight classes, perhaps every 10 pounds. This would allow fighters to compete closer to their natural size, improving safety and fairness. For example, let's find out what fighters like Islam Makhachev actually weigh when they're healthy without cutting weight. If he naturally weighs 185 or 190 pounds, then that's the weight class he should compete in. No more weighing in a day before the fight, cutting extreme weight, and rehydrating to gain an advantage. That system is outdated. Fighters should be competing against opponents their own size, not fighting someone who might have rehydrated to 20 or 30 pounds heavier overnight. Yes, changing this system won't be easy, but it's no harder than what the sport went through when USADA came in to eliminate steroid use. Before USADA, fighters found ways to game the system. But once stricter drug testing was implemented, you saw physiques change and the sport became cleaner. Weight cutting is just another form of sanctioned cheating, and it needs to go. For instance, Alex Pereira reportedly weighed 185 pounds when he fought Israel Adesanya, but ballooned to 226 pounds the very next day. That's absurd. Weight cutting is unsafe and unfair, and it puts fighters at unnecessary risk. Dehydrating your body and brain 24 hours before stepping into a cage fight is reckless. For the safety of the athletes, the sport needs to evolve. It's time to make a change. Fighters should no longer have to compromise their health just to make weight. Let's move forward for a safer, more level playing field. If you agree, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more MMA updates, insights, and discussions. Together, let's keep pushing for positive change in the sport we all love. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on daily MMA content.